Right, hi everyone. Good morning. Welcome to Life Remixed Leadership Equilibria Leadership Session. Going to be a great session today. We're going to talk about conflict resolution, but I'm putting a slight twist on it around inner conflict, and we're going to look at that and what that means to our personality, our e-colours, etc. as well. Before we do that, the last couple of sessions have been very, very interesting. We have had great sessions on managing fear and building confidence in the last couple of weeks. And we also had the purpose, vision, and goals session. Lewis is back this week. Lewis very kindly took on the session around managing fear, and I thought there was some really great discussions. Would anyone like to sort of give any further feedback from the last couple of sessions before we kick off, just while we let a couple of people arrive? Andy, you're normally quite vocal. Do you want to unmute yourself?
I'm sorry, mate. I'm here. Ask me the question again. I wasn't
No,
actually paying attention.
that's fine. That's fine. I thought you were typing something in the chat box. That's why.
I actually was. I was congratulating Wayne privately on this 100-day no alcohol challenge.
When does it finish? Does it finish this
It
week?
finishes on Thursday, Friday.
This is on Friday. 100 days no alcohol. Yes, amazing. Everyone who's completed that. So brilliant job. It's really interesting in our we have a WhatsApp group just from January the 1st each year. We have a WhatsApp group for 100 days no alcohol challenge that Andy, masterminds and I support. But actually, it's amazing how many people are discussing this year, particularly continuing on with no alcohol permanently. There's a lot of discussion in the WhatsApp group about that, and I'm there to support that and coach people on that as well. And it's such a positive for people if they decide. There's no pressure, but if they decide to refrain from alcohol, it's actually a real win on
Mm.
so many levels. And I'm always interested when I speak to Lewis about alcohol because Lewis said he tried a drink when he was about 20 or something and it didn't agree with him and he's never drunk since. And I think you can see the results in his energy. So, but Andy,
Right.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
as far as managing fear, building confidence, purpose, vision, goals, the sort of stuff we've looked at last couple of weeks, any thoughts for the team?
Uh, Not really. My brain's a little empty at the moment because I'm working on so many other things. But regarding inner conflict, that you talking about today, I think that will tie in perfectly with the 100-day no alcohol challenge because a lot of people are afraid to say, "I'm never drinking again," even though they would like to do that because they're worried about letting other people down or what other people will say. So that is a big stumbling block for some people who think they never want to drink again. But I've said to a lot of people who do go such a long time without drinking, I believe you're only one more blowout away from never drinking again because the pain that's going to come after that big session is hard to imagine.
It's hard to justify actually. I mean, what would be the point? What a good laugh, yeah, short term, self destruction. It
I
doesn't
could
really.
I could I could talk for hours on
We
this
could wax
subject.
lyrical for a long time about this, couldn't we, Andy? But it's a really important point because that inner voice. You might have one inner voice. There's a whole thing, isn't there, about the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other, or there's a story, isn't there, about the two wolves on your shoulders. One's positive, one's negative, and which one's going to survive, which one's going to win? Well, the one you feed, and it's stuff like that that I think if we actually understand ourselves better, we will get better results in life for sure. So I'm going to kick off. We'll let some more people in as and when they arrive.
Hey
But
Mark,
yeah,
just before I forget, so
sure.
one of the questions that came up a couple of weeks ago was around ADHD, and I just wanted to let everybody know we haven't forgotten.
Mm.
We've had some good inner discussions already about it, and when the time comes, we'll certainly be doing a good survey and then probably maybe have a special session about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely have a survey, to understand people and their viewpoints. We can definitely have a session on it. My first take on it, which I believe I mentioned last week as well, is that if we understand a dis-ease is two words, a disorder is also two words, and I think that's a really important start point. But I'm looking forward to really getting into the great conversation with everybody. So yeah, it'll be lively and really really useful. So thank you, Lewis. Yes, good point. And yeah, we continue to to discuss and grow and get to all the places that we want to get to for people. So, as I said, last time this session was held by David and Laura Senior, and so I didn't host it. But I just decided a couple of days ago, as you do, I just decided let's just twist this a little bit. So we will look at conflict resolution and managing change for companies and teams and things like that a little bit later. But I really wanted to look at inner conflict as well and what that means to us, because it can have the ability to stop us in our tracks. And we need to think about what that's going to, well, how that's going to affect our e-colors as well. So I had a little chat with Lewis and Paul beforehand as well, and they've got some really interesting angles and stories and stuff as well. So I think we'll all share this, but I really want to hear from you guys as well at the opportunities when we can to hear from you. So please do manage your microphone, especially Reed by the beach bar. But anyway, please, each of you manage your microphone. That's great. And Reed, I'm only joking. I'm looking forward to you unmuting and giving us some vibes. But contribute your thoughts, feelings, and ideas as always, please. So, managing change, conflict resolution, inner conflict is what we're going to talk about today. And we want to make sure that we get ourselves right before we start to think about how we're going to interact and manage with others and work with others. So very, very key part of our personal development and our growth. Most of us on this call now understand the e-colors concept. Some watching back may not, but we need to understand ourselves and our percentages. The percentages on the premium reports are absolute gold dust to understand the percentage piece. Now, if you look at the e-colors and you understand people, including you, understanding yourself, is there an opportunity for inner conflict? So I think if we'll kick off the session like this. So I'll very briefly myself, as a yellow over blue, as I used to be when I first started my e-colors, there was a massive inner conflict because my faster paced self wanted to go, 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 chat, 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 be friendly, be friendly, be friendly, make stuff happen. But my steadier paced blue often clashed inside of me. So my faster pace and my steadier pace, my yellow and my blue, clashed quite often. And at times that would put me into my particularly blue limiters, potential limiters, that unsure, a little bit awkward, reluctant to speak up. Some of those potential limiters would kick in when I was having that inner conflict. In yellow as well, but certainly in blue. Paul, Grant, do you want to just talk a little bit about what you feel about inner conflict as a red over green?
Yeah, no, certainly. When I come to do tasks, my reds, pushing me to get a task done as quick as I can. But every now and then, although my green's quite a bit lower, my green starts kicking in and saying, "Do you have enough information? Do you not need more information?" So, but obviously, because my red sort of outranks my green, then that keeps me going to get a task done. But there is some sort of conflict going on inside my head at times.
So based on that based on your percentages that obviously of yourself as one of the co-founders, that yeah, you perfectly explained. Your red will be the dominant, will go, 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 want to get the task finished. But sometimes there'll be an inner conflict of your green saying, "Oh, well, hang on a minute. Have we thought about this? Have we got the data that we need? Have we got the analytics that we need?" And I think that's
and then also, if you go back to my next color, which is blue, it'll also be saying, are you thinking about the people? Are you, are you engaged in your relator part of your personality? So I think it all a lot relies on the percentage of e-colors.
absolutely. And so would you be thinking about how is this going to land with people?
Yeah. Yes, but less so because the red's the dominant e-color by far.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing. Great stuff in the chat box already. Thank you, Jane, for the comment on the 100-day no alcohol challenge and everything there as well. Pete D Red Green says I usually get the conflict after I've done the task. Very interesting, Pete. Thank you. Angela says as a top green I can overanalyze myself and situations. Yeah, for sure. Understand that, Angela. And from your perspective, the green and blue, potentially the thoughts and the feelings may conflict at times. And it's important to try and understand that. Lewis, do you want to share anything here as just to sort of start us off about experience around, you think, inner conflict within yourself and then potentially with other colleagues?
Actually, I think as a yellow red, I don't think it's something that's ever been prevalent.
Mm.
Going back to the non-alcohol for 100 days, like Mark says, I haven't had a drink for years. It did just alcohol didn't seem to agree with my stomach. So in honor of everybody else, I decided to do 100 days with no chocolate, and it nearly killed me.
And have you done it?
I did it up. I don't. Well, I'm not sure. Andy, is the 100 days up now? Because
No,
I
Friday.
actually last weekend I started having a piece of chocolate. So
Oh, so you did 90 days.
yeah, 90 days, a solid 90 days.
It's only 90 days of action.
Inspiration for a new change, I think, next year.
That's it. Yeah. Wow. Can you imagine trying to do a 100-day no sugar challenge for people? God, send a few people do lally, I think. But well done, Lewis, for doing that. So, on inner conflict, yeah, I understand that as a yellow over red. I have a lot less inner conflict than I did as a yellow blue. Um, but any colleagues or anything sort of through your history that where things have kind of popped up and you've
Well, as we were mentioning before, and again, I've been looking at the e-colors of the people on the court. I, from our e-colors experiences around the world, people will tell us that those people who are predominantly red, blue, blue, red, and yellow, green, green, yellow tend to have a lot of inner conflict. That the two personality styles actually kind of fight with each other sometimes. Again, you'll hear it a lot from red blues, blue reds. The red wants to move forward and the blues apologizing for moving forward. And one will, depending on the circumstance, one will override the other. So to me, I think that's where I've seen the most conflict. I'll talk a little bit about it later, Mark, when we talk about in organizations, because I've got a couple of good examples there, but I think that makes it,
great.
where I'm at right now.
Great stuff. Thank you. So again, we need to understand. So I'm going to give us some advice today and some things that I've researched and practiced myself that are going to help. We all have different drivers based on our percentages, which is key. But we also must understand that our e-colors on just knowing our e-colors is not the solution to like quieting our inner voice, sorting out our inner conflicts, which do need to be sorted out through quite deep coaching at times in order to be able to release issues and then be able to move forward successfully. Because we all have our strengths, as you know, and these are all in your premium report, which I urge you to read and reread and reread. Because we all have our strengths and we all have our potential limiters, and we understand those strengths and potential limiters, we start to get to a much, much, much better place. But it's an ongoing piece of work, always, always, always. We should all understand that we have things to improve upon at all times, which is key. Must master the things, understand your e-colors, be grateful for things that you might see that are not great, not good. Having belief, having confidence, growing your purpose, vision, and goals, leadership, being a great leader, working as a team, in a team, with a team, creating positive mental attitude, and then of course the money and the growth will always follow if you follow certain steps to get there. Most people are trying to earn all the money they can without actually having done any personal development, and it can be quite tricky for people to start to understand the different order of things. Gratitude is always the key. Attitude of gratitude. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being a part of it. So let's talk about mastering inner conflict. I decided to look at this in the last few days because I wanted to give people advice and understanding around how to ensure that your inner voice is aligned with what you would like to get to in your life. So let's talk about 7 steps. Right. So the first key is awareness. All right. Awareness of the inner conflicts. That's why I asked the questions at the start. And please, any of you use the chat box or indeed feel free to unmute if you'd like to speak and share anything. But getting to that point of understanding the first step about awareness is key. It's because you can't master what you're not aware of. So it's a little bit like Alcoholics Anonymous, actually, since we're talking about the 100-day no alcohol challenge completing on Friday. You can't work in Alcoholics Anonymous, or you can't be even a client of Alcoholics Anonymous until you walk in and say, "Hi, my name's Mark, and I'm an alcoholic." So you're aware of the problem. If you're not aware of any of the problems, if you're not self-aware of the problems, you can't master them. So that's where my e-colors premium report really had a huge effect upon me 15 years ago or more, because ultimately I read this report and just went, well, wow, okay, yeah, okay, I'm aware of these things a bit more now. And that's where my fascination began. So pause and observe your inner dialogue. Are you torn between fear and desire, or logic and emotion? Or what are you torn between? It could be, you know, action. You could be red action and blue emotion, as an example. Or you could be yellow, engagement and green data, or indeed any of the other color combinations. I think it's very, very important to understand if you're torn between things, what are they? And then we just need to learn to pause and observe inner dialogue, which we'll talk about how to do that. You could journal or just simply sit in silence, recognizing where the conflict lies. A lot of top color blues that I've coached with, or indeed high percentage blues, often like to go out in nature, and they'll go out for a walk about. And that's not to say that I see Andy Ward walking up and down the beach. I see Lewis Senior going on long walks as well. But anyone with high blue, very much the first thing they say to me is, "Oh, I just had to switch everything off and go out for a walk in nature, to get rid of any kind of conflict, or quieten my inner voice and things like that." But journaling's a good thing. Writing a book is a good thing. Anything like that actually helps you release the inner conflict that's going on inside of you is very, very important. Now, ask yourself a couple of questions here. Am I trying to please others while ignoring my own needs? And am I following my heart or my fear? And once you understand the answer to these couple of questions, you're starting to get where you would like to get to. When I was trying to please others and ignoring my own needs, I quite often end up getting hurt, more emotionally than physically, but certainly trying to please others, ignoring my own needs, caused me a problem. And then, am I following my heart or my fear? Once you can understand that, if you remember the stick man and the graphic that I show when we look at the stick man, are you following something that is giving you great knowledge, great belief, great confidence? Are you working towards something that you're really confident about? Or are you in your fears and just getting by and surviving? And quite often people can flip-flop between the two, but the key point of getting on track is to be solidly following your thoughts, feelings, your passions, your skills, the things that you're good at, etc. These are very, very important points. So you need to identify then those competing parts, which is why I asked about your e-color combinations and where you think clashes might come. Inner conflict comes from the different parts of of the different things that are going on. These parts usually have positive intentions, even if the actions or outcomes can be negative. So again, it's understanding positive intentions, but then positive outcomes is the key. See, as an example, your inner critic might want to keep you safe from failure, and your dreamer wants you to take risks and live boldly. So we can understand that might be an inner conflict. The chimp paradox, internal conflict. Andy, do you want to just, because I have read and listened to parts of that. I don't think I've completed the whole thing actually, which is not like me, but do you want to just give us a quick couple of minutes on that, or a couple of lines on that?
Yeah, I feel like I'm having a test. I can't remember exactly, but
No, it's not a
basically,
test.
yeah, no. But basically, the I think it's the challenge between personality and character. The me understanding my red dominance, my red strengths, sometimes gives me an issue with then trying to communicate with other people in a way that I know I shouldn't, but my chimp, actually, it's the other way around. I know I shouldn't bite at somebody, for example, if I'm having a conversation with them, but my chimp acts quicker than I can because that's it. I'm getting to where it is now. Our chimp brain works faster than our human brain, and our computer within our brain works even faster than that. So it's all about understand. You can't control the chimp, You can only understand it and give it signals to make it behave better. I've slaughtered that, but that's basically
No, it's really great angle,
how it kind of works.
and I suppose the pause button can come into that as well, right? Being able to,
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So, for example, thinking about chocolate, Lewis mentioned chocolate. If you're on a diet and you know chocolate is the, is the definitely the devil, you know yourself don't have the chocolate, but that chimp inside you, like you say, the good and the bad, is saying, "Go on, have the chocolate. Who cares? What's it going to do?"
A little bit won't hurt.
Yeah, completely. So whenever I think of inner conflicts, I think of my chimp, and there are exercises you can do to pacify the chimp and keep it at bay and appease it rather than trying to actually control it. And the chimp is also seen as your willpower.
Mm.
I'm sure you, as a, you have a lot of experience of putting it better than I could. How trying to fight your willpower is kind of pointless. You have to overcome that or something.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is trying to fight anything is yeah, pretty much pointless. Learning to accept yourself and then using willpower as a muscle. So I often talk about the decision making as a muscle. So the more decisions we make, the bigger that muscle gets. I would say the same with willpower. It's decisions, isn't it? I decide to only put healthy things in my body, and then I build. The more decisive, the more the willpower gets stronger and stronger and stronger to such a point where it becomes not even relevant. Certainly, that was my journey with alcohol, and when you see many people just starting that journey with alcohol, as we do in 100 days, it's really really interesting. So, excellent point from Angela there, saying our chimp being controlled by hormones. Yeah, 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 yeah. And balance them. Yeah, great point, Angela. Thank you. Um, Stacey, your inner critic is very strong as a green over blue e-color. Yeah, I totally understand that. Stacey, are you not on screen? Are you? Have you got children with you? Because it's half term, so you might not be able to speak, I guess.
No, I've not got children. I'm just trying to get some work done. Quite
Oh,
busy
well,
this morning.
okay. Do you want to share a little bit just about that inner critic voice?
I just think the inner critic for me, it is very much the angel and the devil.
Mm,
I feel like I have sitting on my shoulder. The devil will give me all the reasons why not to do something, and the angel will sort of be like, "Yeah, but you never know if you don't try." But
mm.
I don't know. I feel like 99% of the time the devil wins.
And that's part of a process. That's part of
Yeah,
the process. But like I said, it's the one that you wanna keep feeding the angel, right? Keep feeding the positive. Uh,
yeah,
but it takes a long time. It's taken me years and years and years. Um, probably 17 to 20 years to master it. And it's consistent work. But it's important work. So yeah, keep going, Stacey, and thank you for speaking
pick
up.
up.
Yeah, thank you for speaking up. I really appreciate that. Um, Scott saying, yeah, recognizing them is easy, but doing something about them is the challenge. Yeah, absolutely, Scott. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Jane, I've given a name to my negative wolf in my head and tell it to pee off sometimes. Yeah, 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 absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. Great conversations in the chat box. Look, ask yourself, what is the part of me, or what is this part of me trying to protect or achieve? So, what is that inner critic trying to keep you safe from failure of? What is your dreamer wanting you to take risks and live boldly about? You know, Tony Robbins, great teacher, says, ask yourself better questions, you'll get better answers. And I think that's such a key point. So when the inner voice starts going off and the inner conflict starts happening, time to ask yourself a better question. What else could this mean? What is this about? Where is this coming from? When you ask and answer those questions, you start to get to a really good place. And as any of you are coaches and working with people, that's what it's about. It's about asking people those better questions, and then you get the better answers. That's what we teach people in e-colors practitioner training, and also in Life Remix coaching. So integrate, don't eliminate. Instead of trying to shut down one side, listen to all parts and find common ground. That's within you, right? Listen to all parts of the conversation. If you've got green, blue, listen to the inner voice for a while, listen to the inner emotions for a while, and then find some common ground, find some balance, understand your equilibria e-colors. And the key point to leverage yourself into the strengths. as of a green over blue in this case, rather than the limiters of. Takes time, effort, energy. It's important. What's a step forward that then honours both your caution and your ambition? Yeah, getting that in place. So making sure that you've got the foundations correct, and then you can build your ambition. Very, very important. Can you take action whilst you still have a safety net? That would be balance, wouldn't it? You know, having a safety net in place, taking action. These two things go hand in hand. I'm just in the process of insuring my life for almost £1 million. That's the safety net for everyone around me that puts them in a good place. So they can understand that if anything happens to me, everything's taken care of, which I think is key. And that means I'm then free to be able to be in a place where I can take lots and lots of action. Pause and play. You know this one very well, people. You really do. Pause to gain clarity and calm the internal chaos. Play the right choice by bringing conscious intent and alignment. Right? Pausing to gain some clarity and calming any internal chaos, any inner conflict, has got to be the important piece there. When the inner conflict flares, try asking which e-color might be overtaking me right now, and what would balance look like. Lewis, do you want to add anything to that at this stage around pause and play and personal intervention?
I think pause and play is definitely the key, key to the kingdom, because, as you say, once you recognize, and I like the way the question is answered, you know, which e-color or which of the personality styles in that moment is taking over. If you can catch it, then you have a much better chance of getting a successful outcome. So I think, and this is the thing I think for a lot of people, sometimes you need to use pause and play. It isn't just pause and it isn't just play. I think, you know, oh, I'm finding that, for example, in my case, my yellow is taking over. I need to press pause on the yellow and maybe press play on the green or the blue. But we're always being catching that moment where we have a tool, we have a practical application that can get you through the moment.
Absolutely, 100%. Stacey just put in the chat box, I need to pause my green and play my red. The interesting point about that, statement, Stacey, is rather than saying I need to, write it again. Please write it again in the chat box for everyone and say I will. She's already done it as I was saying it. Yeah, exactly. I will pause my green and play my red. Is really going to be a strong statement to yourself. Again, that's about building that muscle. So well done, Stacey, for catching that. So align with your purpose. Inner conflict lessens when your daily actions align with your core values and your vision, which is so important. Which is why we talk about these things. Creating vision in your mind, understanding the purpose of why you get out of bed every day, why you're doing what you're doing, can be about others because it's important, but also must drive you on and make you feel good as part of a process for sure. So define it, which is what we spoke about last week and we speak about a lot. And then ask which path serves my long-term mission, not just my short-term emotions. Now, let's think about this. Andy, I'd love to come to you about that comment about excellently explained in Money Remixed in a moment, if I may. Ask which path serves my long-term mission, not just my short-term emotions. I want you to think about this, because when you're being quote unquote triggered, by something that puts you into your e-colors potential limiters, or indeed just triggers you in some way that makes you unhappy or puts you in a negative vibration or does something that's not good, that's generally short-term emotions. It's generally things that are happening quickly in the moment, short-term triggers. When we must ask ourselves which path serves my long-term mission and manage that side of our short-term emotions. Andy, do you want to just explain or add to what your comment is there in the box?
Just it reminded me. I recently read this part of Vision in Money Remixed, and it just hit home again. Having your purpose and having your vision, and then anything that you do, having the opportunity to stop and think, well, is this benefiting me? Is it benefiting my long-term plans? Like having that cake when you know you're on a diet and you need to hit a certain weight. It's a real good yardstick for you to judge actually where you're at or draw a vision of what you're trying to achieve.
And it keeps you on track, right?
Yeah, completely.
And it actually,
I said before, I love the analogy of in that roadmap. You would never dream of driving off somewhere just guessing at where you're going to get to. You're always going to have a concrete plan of how to get there and achieve it.
absolutely, absolutely. But most people don't do that, right? They come out of school and they just muddle their way through life and etc. And I think it's a key point to understand. That is a very, very important point. Talk it out. Okay. Often speaking with a trusted mentor, a coach, or a therapist helps untangle the knots because many of us are brought up. Louise Hay says in her book, You Can Heal Your Life, she says, we're all victims of victims. So very often we are brought up by other people who are doing the best they can and they give us the best possible knowledge that they can, but ultimately, perhaps they don't always give us the best advice or program our subconscious for success. They program our subconscious to do exactly what they did. That's why things kind of repeat in families, history repeating, and all that kind of stuff. So, speaking with someone else who has a different viewpoint often helps untangle these knots and these issues. I do this with Life Remixed coaching clients. The key point around this is when people speak out loud, their own truth becomes clearer to them. Let's say that again. When people speak out loud, their own truth becomes clearer to them. So quite a lot of the times, especially as a top yellow, I have to hit my pause button and really listen to people in coaching because it's actually a gift. Lewis's mum told him the greatest gift you can give to another human being is to listen to them. Well, actually, the reason for that is when people speak out loud, their own truth becomes clearer to them. And therefore that becomes a win. All I do is observe, guide, and support their journey to ensure that they get the results that they really want. Different tools. Kerry, I believe, might come into the call a little bit later, but Kerry talks a lot about meditation, breath work. Reed actually talks a lot about meditation as well. Reed, do you want to unmute for a second? How's your background noise?
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, go for it.
Meditation wise, yeah, I've been meditating every day for about 5 years now. Being a high color red um, massively helps me each day to ground myself. I would even go as far as to say to calm myself for the day. And that allows me to consciously, use my play and pause buttons as needed. I'm not saying it's, everything is 100% on track. Still have my moments where the red kicks in, but it certainly helps. I'll give an example. I'm on holiday this week for a few days, and I didn't meditate yesterday.
Yeah.
But for the first time in probably 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Just different routine in the morning. I just got up and didn't get an opportunity to have a quiet space to sit and meditate. By the afternoon, I noticed I was getting a bit touchy, impatient with some of the waiters and the staff and bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And my wife just gently put her hand on me and said, "Did you meditate this morning?" I said no. So it does, for me, it's definitely a morning grounding session that definitely helps me personally in a big way.
That's a really great testimonial, Reed. Thank you for meditation. Creating space between thoughts and reactions is exactly what Reed's talking about there. And I'm not a big one for long meditations, each to their own for sure. Some people will do, 10, 20, 30 minutes meditating. I'm not a big one for that. But what I learned was, if you like, fast meditation in the moment by learning to focus and being completely in the moment of what I'm doing when I'm doing it. And that actually is a really interesting point for everybody, I think, as well. Find your solution, find what works for you, and then keep doing more of that. Therapy is a powerful approach to speak your inner emotions. I had 3 years of therapy back in my early 30s. Very useful time. You can think about values, purpose, vision, goals, mapping it all out, clarify what matters most, and then rate your current alignment where you are, and how can you keep improving it. the Equilibria coaching, 2 premium report debrief sessions with a practitioner to start to untangle any issues. That first point of awareness is a really, really great thing to do. There's multiple practitioners on the calls. There's multiple people available to you at any time. And when you watch this video back, if you want to reach out, please do. Or you can use the chat box there as well. And in the Life Remixed coaching, 12 months of accredited leadership coaching is what I offer to people. I get quite a lot of people coming to me saying, "Oh, can you just do 1 or 2 sessions?" And I'm like, no, because it needs to be commitment. It needs to be a 12-month commitment from both parties to really affect change. And many people will stay and work longer than that as well. But it's really key to growth. So, mastering conflict with others, and how do we effectively manage conflict? Could be a disagreement, could be uncertainty around new processes. Conflict can often arise. Okay, it doesn't have to be disruptive though. It can be handled well. It can be an opportunity for growth, of course, as well. But before diving in, let's understand how conflict spikes during periods of change. Whether it's a new project, anything like that, people can get uncertainty. And that uncertainty during times of change can create conflict. Lewis, do you want to talk a little bit about what we spoke about before, about things where people are trying to manage change?
Yeah, well, obviously, when you're working, a lot of times when you're working with organizations, there's significant steps that need to be taken along the way. But actually, a lot of it is right back to to each individual as well. So the way that we typically will coach it with organizations is there are 4 crucial steps, if you like. And the first one is identify the reaction and the desired response to change, because people are going to be, depending on their own personality, their circumstances, as Andy was saying, where they're at in their own purpose, that's going to have a huge impact on how they how respond to the change that's coming. And then engage in intentional communication. You'll be amazed how many times we work with companies that are, even Fortune 400, Fortune 10 companies, and the communication really doesn't work as well as everybody would like it to do. So being highly intentional with the communication, and by being intentional with the communication, are you appealing to the red, the yellow, the green, and the blue in each one of us? And then empower the team ownership of the change implementation. So you may be a leader who drives change from the top, but you really need to make sure that there's ownership throughout the organization to actually make the change happen. And then be supportive of the change adoption, because it takes time. So, for example, we're working with one company right now, which goes through change about every 3 years and has done for the last 20. And there are a group of people in that organization who are kind of, oh, here we go again. And they start to lose. They will tell you, I used to be married to the company. Now I'm divorced from the company, but I still work for them. Their attitude to where they used to be to where they're at is significant. So being a supportive, in the process of change is really, really important.
And actually, as an observation, Lewis,
Mm.
would you suggest that after we've looked there a little section on mastering inner conflict, when people master their inner conflict, do you think it improves their intentional communication and being able to manage change?
Very much so. Again, well, if you go back to the whole thing around the conversations that have to take place, most people, once they've satisfied their own inner conflict, if you like, if am I going to be part of it? I'm going to sit on the fence and wait and see what happens. Once they've realized where they're at and they're fully committed to where they're gonna land, I think it becomes a lot easier.
Excellent. Yeah, right. Agreed fully. So a lot of the people that I work with become more successful because they manage their inner conflict. And e-color is definitely a start point for that. But then if you're working into a team and you're working into a company, you haven't maybe got the one-to-one time with people, but certainly it's discussions that can be had once people know their e-colors and their strengths and their potential limiters, which opens the door to these great conversations.
Right. And sorry, just thinking about that, Mark. So if you think, I mean, probably a lot of these people on the call, or at least some, you watch some of the football teams don't go any further than the UK. Some of the teams are going through massive change, and you've got people all the way from the ownership down to literally the kit people. They have to decide individually if they're ready to move with the change or it's just not for them. And some will actually walk away because it's not for them, and others will buy in completely.
Absolutely. I'm not going to talk about Chelsea or Paul's team, Manchester United.
Not
So,
that I was even thinking about.
so do you want to talk a little bit about intentional communication?
Yeah, because again, like I mentioned before, and it's very, very interesting when we watch leaders who really take on the idea that, oh, if I do intentionally communicate through the lens of the e-colors, boy, the results are phenomenal. So the first thing to think about is the blue actually is the why. Why do we need this change and what are the key objectives? Because one thing that drives people mad is when change is happening and there's no real purpose behind it, or the purpose has not been fully explained. So rather than this is what we're going to do, if you could start with why do we need the change, and then look from a green perspective, how will it affect the people that are doing the work and the way that they work as well. So, for example, if they're being asked to work in a different way, what are the benefits of that? Then we look through the yellow perspective, who will be impacted and how will it impact the people positively? Because, for example, in a large organization, it may well be that the leaders, it's crystal clear to them what the positive impact will be, but it may not be clear to the people who are doing the actual work. Again, no different with a soccer team when a new manager comes in. And then last but not least, what will the benefits be and for the change into the whole organization? So if the why, the how, the who, and the what is covered, that's about as good as you're going to get it, and making sure that all of those are addressed. And if you do cover all of those, then at least you've given it your best shot in making sure that you've given people the opportunity to understand where you're at.
Is it fair to say that the why is often not explained in organisations to people?
Very much so. It's the one, and again, if you think about it, I know we talk a lot about this when we're talking with, companies in high risk industry, example. Most procedures are written with here's what to do and here's how to do it, and there's very little thought put into oh, and by the way, this is why we're doing it. So if you think about it from an e-colors perspective, you've already lost a large majority of your workforce if you're not explaining the why.
Yeah, no, absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Lewis. Andy, you make a really good point in there as as an e-colors practitioner yourself. Very much about looking at the differences in comparison, if you like, in observing people that have done some self-development and some e-colors work to people who haven't.
Yeah, completely. When in the past I would have had conversations with people, for example, organising a festival with trying to get things done. Lewis drives home to me there. Sometimes I might not have been clear enough as to the why, because in my mind I know why, and my ego used to silently talk to me. I think, well, it's not their it's not their need to know why. I'm telling them what they should be doing, so they should just follow. After working with you now, Mark, I understand that I need to cover all of those four bases,
Yeah,
and I have had. I don't see it as conflicts. I see it as discussions now with people, trying to get my point across to them, and then them not particularly seeing it in my way. Sometimes you feel there are only so many ways that you can explain something to someone, and there's the really famous meme about, don't waste your energy trying to explain something to someone, because they're only ever going to be able to understand it from their point of understanding, or words to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, but when I have spoken to people who understand self-development, they know that I'm not coming at them, and so they're not being defensive with their replies, and they're more open to seeing my point of view and saying, okay, yeah, this is, I get that.
and running the radio station as you're running it, you've got 90 people. You see the ones that are self-developed and the ones that are that are not doing that work, and that's the stark difference you must be seeing in
Oh
different.
yeah, completely. But even then, there are occasions where it's knowing people's e-colors as an example and trying to deal with them in that situation and giving information in ways that I know somebody would require more visually, even after doing that, it still doesn't reach home. So then it's very difficult to stop. And it's not about being right or wrong, trying to address it again in a different way. Sometimes you can hit stumbling blocks still, but having that power, and I've just been listening all the way through this. E-colors is definitely for me, even though I still have a long way to go, I still see it as sort of like a superpower, my cloak that protects me from so much and helps me give so much as well.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for sharing. Paul Hutchinson, are you there on the call?
Hello,
Hello, Paul. How you doing?
I'm good, buddy. You?
Yeah, very well, mate. Thank you. Very well. So, Simon, you read Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why,
Yeah,
and
absolutely loved it straight away. Made so much sense. The actual message is so simple, but when you think about every business and you look at how everybody promotes their business and talks about their business, still nobody does this with their why. You know, some people do, obviously.
yeah,
Apple do it brilliantly, as Simon says, but it's definitely a big one that people need to really think about. I talk about it all the time to my clients when I'm doing their social media. You know, when we're trying to promote something, we have to talk about why does someone need this in their life. Like if we're promoting a book, you know, why do they need it? How is it going to help them? Everybody just says, "Oh yeah, it's got this." We talk about this. We talk about that. That's not important. It's the why. It's the connection to the, you know, it's literally the connection to that person with the feeling. That's the bit that sums it up.
brilliant, mate. Thank you. Yeah, great observation, great angle. Really appreciate
Mm.
that. And actually, you joined a little bit late, but with the inner conflict piece we talk about, your e-colors are green thinker, red doer. Do you ever find that you get a bit of inner conflict there about when you're going into think and detail mode, but part of you just wants to get on and go, go, go?
Yeah, all the time. The go, go, go one overtakes a lot, but I do need to. But then I go, well, hang on a minute. How can you do it without
Yeah.
knowing the full details? So that's kind of when, and then my other part is when I ask a client or someone for the full details and I don't get it straight away,
Hmm.
I'm like, oh man, come on, what's going on? You want me to do this or not?
It's part of the management of yourself and others, mate, for sure. But brilliant.
Definitely, definitely.
Thank you, mate. Angela, are you able to unmute for a second? Thank you, Paul. Angela, you said a great thing here about acknowledgement that people have been heard is sometimes enough, and I agree with you fully. Are you there, Angela? Can you
Yeah,
speak?
I'm here. I'm here.
Hi.
Yeah, I've found that a lot. I've led a lot of change management programs in the NHS, and the why is what people want to know first and foremost. So I agree with what you're saying, Paul.
Mm,
And sometimes, you know, we have to make change. There is a necessity for it, but I think sometimes people just want to be heard. They just want their voice heard. And if you give people that opportunity, it makes the you must do this a lot easier.
yeah, no, I agree.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a very important point. The energy of as human beings, we need various different things at different times, but one part of us definitely needs to be safe and seen and heard. And
Yeah.
it's a really important point. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Angela.
Hey,
Uh,
Mark, I want to pick up on that if you don't mind, because I think
please.
there's another piece to it. And I'm thinking back just before Christmas, I was in Egypt and I was talking to a lot of the staff who all report to somebody who's predominantly green blue.
Mm,
And they one by one would come to me and they say, "Oh, you know, we have a big of a problem here, and this is happening, and that's happening, and the other's happening." And I say, "Well, you know, have you talked to the your supervisor?" "Yeah, yeah." I said, "Well, did he listen to you?" I said, "Oh, yeah, he listened really well." I said, "What's the problem?" "He didn't do anything. He
mm,
just listened." So
mm,
for some people, being heard is one thing, but then they need to see. There are times when they need to see action
mm.
from being heard.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. It depends on different people and different moments and different times, and that's why we can dip into all of the e-colors at different times as well. But yeah, good point. Yeah, certainly, being heard is very important, and then the action that comes from that equally as important for many people. So yeah, good share. Thank you all for sharing. Jane says about assuming stuff about her husband, which is great. And Jane, I'll come back to you at the end of that. So I think that'll be a fun end to the call there for sure. This is a really interesting piece, and Lewis introduced me to this probably end of last year, and it's very much about how we lead matters. And I'm going to click through it actually, and then Lewis, I'd just quite like you to explain a bit about each piece, if you may.
Yeah, so the way that we use this when we're working with our clients is if you think about the whole gear model as your organization. So Andy, for you, this would be, your organization when you're trying to organize event, or for anybody, read for yourself in your organization. So one of the things that happens throughout life is, just like you're doing today, you pick up continual use of knowledge. And so we're all learning something today, for example, around inner conflict and how it marries with some of our e-colors knowledge. Typically, as a leader, supervisor, parent, friend, whatever, as the leader language grows, so do the behaviors. And so your language starts to change. So, like Andy's saying, now the e-colors could be seen as his superpower. He probably wouldn't have said that 18 months ago. So what happens then is as the leader language becomes more richer, if you like, the behaviors tend to change. And then when you start to engage with the people who you're working with or around, we have this engagement or feedback loop, if you like. And the reason that we put it on this kind of belt is the more engagement that you have, the more that you start to change your language, the
Morning.
more the workforce or the people you're working with, they too
About
will
5
start to
minutes to
change
go.
their language. So, for example, what you might find is if you took where a lot of us several years ago may not have ever used the word pause and play because it wasn't in our language. Today, most people who know something about the e-colors at some point will mention, I need to be pressing my pause or pressing my play button. As a result of the leader knowledge growing, the leader language and behavior changes through engagement. All being well, then you've got the workforce language and their behaviors change, and ultimately comes. And that's basically the principle is that's what you're looking for. So rather than telling people this is what I want you to do, as your language and behaviors change, the people we work with language and behavior will change, and you'll get the outcomes that you're looking for.
Perfect. Thank you, Lewis. Beautifully explained. And that's where we create great cultures, great values, and we have safe, efficient, reliable operations and a successful outcome. So very important, though, that the leader knowledge and the leader language and behaviours sets the tone, which is massively important.
And intentionally, because the moment that language or behavior is not in line with what you're wanting to do or wanting people to do, then you kind of lose the plot.
Yeah, it's very easy to lose the plot, and we've all seen we all talk, don't we, about certain leaders that get promoted to certain roles because they're very good at doing the job, but then actually they sometimes lack a little bit around people skills and being able to work with others, and therefore they lose people very, very quickly, and then you don't get the desired outcomes.
Right. And then if you think about the whole business of change, what Sidney Dekker said is absolutely true. If you want someone to shift their paradigm, you've got to give them a new paradigm that makes more sense to them than the one you're asking them to leave. And so that's the whole process of change, if you like, right there. You have to create that new paradigm.
And everyone understanding the word paradigm means multitude of habits. A multitude of habits. So we've all got a multitude of habits, and if you're looking to show someone a change in one of their habits, you need to make it make more sense to them than the one you're asking them to leave. Otherwise, they'll stay in their comfort zone and they'll stay where they feel most comfortable. So brilliant, thank you, Lewis. When we talk about the 8 essentials, very much understanding this context. Understanding this context. Understanding and discussing team strengths and potential limiters, point number 1. Aligning team goals, having a common vision, mission, values and strategy. Clarity of roles and processes, so everybody understands each other. And then building trust by encouraging transparency, trust and psychological safety going hand in hand. Understanding diverse perspectives and appreciating them drives change around diversity and inclusion. And we're the only ones that look at that from a personality perspective. Reinforce that commitment, setting clear expectations, holding each other accountable in a positive way to meet responsibilities, and then implementing that feedback loop so that people get positive experiences. It's difficult to build, but it's worth taking the time to build it if you're going to do something that's going to be of note in the world. So if we talk about each personality style, just as we round up, we can all have a significant impact. So high yellow socializers, optimistic, enthusiastic, skilled at engaging others, helping people feel comfortable, but they might avoid addressing deeper issues or lean towards a quick response to try and maintain harmony, sometimes overlooking important details or dismissing the seriousness of the conflict. High yellows can focus on open communication and collaboration to make sure everyone's heard, and need to balance our desire with harmony with a commitment to address underlying issues directly, getting the task done in a good way. High blues, lots of empathy, patient, good listeners, but they might avoid confrontation or struggle with expressing themselves or their own needs. And this could result in issues in inner conflict issues. The same for yellows, blues, reds, and greens. But practicing assertiveness while maintaining lots of empathy, expressing your needs if you're high blue, to clearly ensure balanced resolution that doesn't compromise their own well-being, their own goals, their own future. Reds, very action orientated, very decisive, goal focused, want to tackle things head on, but there might be challenges as they might come across as confrontational or even impatient at times. And they might prioritize just getting the job done over potentially feelings of others, or risk bulldozing through a conflict without fully addressing everyone's needs. Step back for top reds, listen, empathize, and don't overlook those perspectives or those emotions of others. Very, very important. With the high greens, analytical and objective. They might break down complex issues and make them easier, which is very, very useful. But they might overanalyze or detach at times, or sometimes look a bit distant without meaning to. These are all important things to work on for all of us. We all have them. High greens can work on showing some more empathy at times and acknowledge others. Certainly green red. Green blue will be better at understanding that empathy. But understand the approach and be thoughtful and considerate of others at all times is high green advice for resolving conflict. So we're almost at time. I appreciate some will have to drop off. We've just got a couple more to look at. Big 4 steps for easy conflict resolution using the E-colours. Get the facts, think things through, demonstrate empathy and listen to understand with relating, communicate and engage, and then get into do afterwards. But if you can work through those, you'll tend to get a much, much better response, which is a good thing, is what we're looking for. Get it resolved is a key point for sure. Understanding your E-colours, your quadrant. You can have a quick look at that. I'll leave it on the screen, or you can watch back the recording as well, and certainly pause the screen and have a look at that. But get it resolved from your perspective, I think is very, very important. And we've done masses of work on this, as you can see, over the years, and we are sharing this more and more and more with organisations here in the UK and beyond. So get things resolved. Very, very important. A key point here, actually, is asking each other, what do you need from me in order to be successful? And here is what I need from you in order to be successful. 2 very, very key questions if you're having any kind of one-to-one conversation, or indeed in a group. But what do you need from me? And here's what I need from you. And I think that's very, very important discussion-wise. Apart from that, I'm going to say, just remember that personal initiative starts with yourself, which is very much about forgive yourself, accept yourself, and be grateful. And once you sort that out with your inner conflict, any inner conflict, you start to then get to a place where you can project that out into the world, and you tend to get much, much, much better results. So we'll leave it there. I want to say, of course, thank you to everybody for being here. I think it's great. We could certainly do an any other business section. Jane, do you want to just unmute for a moment and just give us a little bit of perspective there about what you were talking about in the chat box?
Um, you have to excuse me, I'm super snotty, so
Yeah, I
you're
hear it.
you're getting a nasally Australian tonight.
Fine.
So do you mean in the last comment?
Yeah,
I put a few
the chat box you put in there about your husband and the fact that he doesn't necessarily think about the why.
Well, I'm just like he's not sort of into any of this sort of
Yeah,
spiritually stuff or anything that I do. Well, he's supportive, but doesn't not so into it. But when I'm like listening and reading these things, I'm like, oh, he's so rad. Like he's such a doer. But the thing I think is really interesting is over the years, like literally, he'll get so stubborn and so this is what we're doing, and we're just doing it. Like he just gets it so stuck in his head, and it's like that's it, it's happening, and he'll just say it's happening, all right, and I'll be like. I'm not going with you. And I will literally have to say to him, because he's so military in the way he thinks. So, and I just will literally say to him, okay, General, you might be going, but you're going to be going alone
hmm
unless you tell your troops why your troops are going to F off on you. So I have to be that blunt with him to snap him out of it because he just gets so
Yeah,
like doing, he
okay.
can't see anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
So
great.
I'm going to be really interested to get him to go through the process so I
Well,
can then find out what colors he is. That's going to help. Obviously, you guys all do it with your partners as well. So I think I've heard Mark, you and Emma, talking about how you use it within your relationship, and I think it's going to be really interesting to apply that to my own relationship as well.
so the key point is when you are becoming a practitioner with us as well, Jane. In
Mm.
due course, I think it's a great point when you ask your partner if they would like to participate and do that. But yes, it's a great point, and it really does bring relationships close together. Which kind of leads me to Scott actually. Scott, I was viewing your practitioner video this morning, your first one. Thank you. And you made a lovely point. I don't know if you're okay to talk about it or not, just about taking your daughter through her e-colors and a
Yeah,
benefit it's been already.
yeah. Right or wrong, we had or we have a relationship where it's not so much father talking to daughter. It's based around having a laugh about things and more casual and relaxed. Where having these one-to-one coaching sessions through e-colors has really given us that opportunity to kind of get down into feelings, challenges that she's come up against the last 2 or 3 years, and I honestly don't think that would have been possible without these structured conversations round her e-colors. So yeah, it's been a great help the last couple of days. Fantastic.
Hey,
Brilliant.
Mark,
Yeah, go on.
would you mind bringing the slides back up to the mutual expectations for a moment?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Scott, this may be interesting. How old is your daughter?
She's 21.
Okay, so I just want to make people aware of this. One of the main reasons that we develop this mutual expectations actually is, I think I've mentioned it before on some of the sessions, that we had the privilege of doing quite a lot of work in residential treatment centers, which is with recovering alcoholics and drug addicts between the age of 11 and 16. And one of the things that struck me very quickly when we started working with these kids was, how did you get yourself into this situation? And the amount of times I heard, well, I just can't live up to the expectations of my parents. And I'd say, well, what are the expectations of your parents? And the answer was, I don't know. I just know I can't live up to them. So that's when we introduced to them and their parents this mutual expectation. And it's just like you're saying, Scott, very much like with the e-colors, it provides a structure to have a conversation that has never been had.
Yeah, she actually she speaks to her grandmother every day on FaceTime, and she told my mum yesterday. She goes, it's fantastic because Dad and I would never have had those conversations if we never spoke about but through the premium report. So yeah, it's a win-win.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you all. Really appreciate that. And yeah, mutual expectations is a fantastic piece of work when we all understand each other's e-colors as well. So we're here to help. Pete, I see you put that in the chat box as well. Here to help anytime. But certainly a key point and part of our mission, for people first and realizing potential, is helping people grow. So, wonderful session. Anyone like to add anything else before we, Angela will be asking my kids what they think my expectations of them are. Nice question to ask, Angela. And again, prompting that, because most of the time we don't have these conversations with each other. We're just busy, getting on with our day, doing our thing. We don't actually have the conversations that we could have that would help us deal with our inner conflict, and indeed any kind of conversations outside as well. Anyone else like to share anything? Caroline, I can come to you if you would know you're happy. And Britt?
I want to ask a question, Mark. I don't know if it's relevant. I know you and I are going to talk again in a little while about conflict resolution and a current case study that I've had this morning. I don't know whether I can talk about that now, an issue that I came up against with one of my DJs. So obviously we'll keep them anonymous because I'm aware I've got DJs with me on this call. I'm trying to get some changes of my radio station across to people, and I was under the impression I'd done everything that I could to provide the information for all different colours. And in conversation with a person who said, well, I need things more visually, after having just spent an hour presenting a Zoom call on how things can get changed. And it's clear that they just didn't take the time to read what I'd sent. So in that situation, if I believe I've done everything that I can, and understanding, taking the need to be right and wrong out of it, because that isn't part of my dialogue anymore, what is the next step to overcome that?
Well, personally, I would suggest it's going to be a really good conversation for mutual expectations, as in, what do you need from me? What do I need from you, etc. I think that's a really important point, because if you think about different e-colors trying to communicate with each other, if you're communicating with another red, yellow, red, green, the way you communicate would be relatively easy. But if you're then communicating with different e-color and different e-color combinations, that's where the mutual expectation comes in. So I think it's a really interesting point. Lewis, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's absolutely. It just ties into exactly what we're saying. You may think, Andy, that you've done everything you can. He obviously, or she, doesn't think you have. So I think by having this mutually, and by the way, one of the things I want to mention is one of the things that I noticed when you do, because there's a document which Mark can provide in having this mutual expectation discussion, is don't wait for an instant answer. So Andy, in your case, you may want to send whoever this person is the document, and you're leading, you're asking the question, what do you need from me for you to be successful? Depending on their personality, it may be a day or it may be 2 weeks before you hear back from them, because most people have never been asked that question before. So they really need time to process, why is he asking me? He's never asked me this before, type thing. All of the things that you'd expect. But then what you will find is, because they've told you what they need from you, you can then tell them, well, if this is what you need from me, then this is what I need from you to help you be successful. And that tends to work very well, Andy. And you've got nothing to lose by trying.
Cool, thank you.
Great observations. Thank you all. Okay, we've 10 minutes over as usual. Top colour yellow's running the session. Apologies. But go and have a wonderful day. Thanks all. Oh, Britt, actually, sorry, Britt, before we go, Britt, did you want to share anything? No, you're comfortable? Okay, great. All right, fantastic. Lovely to see you all. Reed, go back to your sunbed. All have a great day. Lots of love, and we'll see you all very soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Mark, can you stay on for a minute?
Sure.